I'm seeing a lot of companies do three costly mistakes when it comes to implementing AI in their businesses. The first one is they're automating work that didn't even need to be automated. The second one, they're creating AI agents that they're having to babysit every step of the process. And the third one is, in some instances, it's costing them more money to do the same work with AI compared to if one of their employees did the same work for them. So I created a framework that we implement with every single client, and I also implemented in my own marketing agency to automate it with AI. And I'm gonna show you exactly how to use it, how to implement it, so that you don't do any of these mistakes. Let's start with its name. It's called TIFDA. I know it's not the sexiest name out there, but it's definitely the most useful. T stands for time, I stands for impact in dollar value, and I will explain in a second. F for frequency, D for documented workflows, and A for available data. So let's start with the top half of the framework. For T, I, and F, you want to score each one of them on a score of 1 to 5. So how does it work in practice? You would first create a list of all the tasks, all the workflows that you do in your business that you potentially would want to automate with AI. And for each one of them, you're going to also list all the subtasks, the sub-workflows. So for example, if you do bookkeeping, there's many other subtasks below bookkeeping. If you're, let's say, a staffing firm and you take a lot of resumes. So for example, reading those resumes is one of your tasks. So, and under it, there are many other subtasks and so on and so forth. So you want to list all of these out. And then for each one of them, you want to score them based on this framework. So if we start with the top half, we have T, I, and F. For each task, you want to score it on a score of 1 to 5 when it comes to time. If it takes you only a couple minutes, it's probably going to be a score of 1 to do the task. If it takes you hours or days, it's going to be closer to a 5. If it takes you 10, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, probably a score of 2 to 3. So it really depends. And by the way, you don't have to be like extremely accurate when it comes to this. As long as you are directionally correct, it's enough. So you're scoring the task relatively to other tasks. So for example, maybe all of your tasks take at least 5 hours to accomplish. Then 5 hours is probably going to be a score of 1. Maybe at maximum, it takes you a couple of days to finish a task. So that the tasks that take a couple of days will have a score of 5. Or maybe you're the opposite type of business where at maximum a task will take you an hour and at the minimum 1 minute. You know what I mean? So then the task that takes you an hour is going to have a score of 5. So you always want to take it in the context of your business and you want to score those tasks relatively to how they compare to each other. So let's go back to this. So for time, you scored it on a score of 1 to 5. Impact in dollar value, meaning does that task or does that workflow or does that type of work has a direct relationship or has a direct impact of you making more money, whether it's more revenue, more profit, or let's say saving a lot of time and money. Maybe, I don't know, you pay 300K for someone to do this for you. And maybe if you do this with AI, you can end up saving a lot of money on this. So when I say impact in terms of dollar value is, does it help you make a lot of money, or automating this, would it help you save a lot of money? Same thing, you score it on a score of 1 to 5. So for example, if you're doing some, admin tasks that have basically zero impact or very minimal impact on your revenue, it's probably going to be a score of 1. If you're fulfilling an essential service of your company, if let's say you are an advertising agency and you're running ads, so running ads is a 5. Now, do you want to automate it? That's a question for later. We have to look at everything else, but it's probably going to have a score of 5 because that's the biggest impact to your revenue. Now, what about frequency? You can do one task that takes you 10 hours, but maybe you do it only once a year. Do you want to automate it? Maybe. But for now, we're going to score this as a frequency of 1. If you do it, let's say once a month, it's probably a score of 3. Once a quarter, probably a score of 2. Once a week, score of 4. Once a day, score of 5. So you see where I'm going with this. So you're going to list all your tasks, and then for each one of them, I'm going to show you some examples in a bit, you're going to add the T, I, and F score. So it's going to be over a total of 15. So for some, you might have a score of 5, for some 10, for some 15. Once you do this, you want to look at documented workflows and available data. Here, we're not adding a score like we do here. It's either a 0 or a 1. You either have a documented workflow or you don't. You either have available data or you don't. So if one of them has a score of 0, meaning if you don't have at least one of them, it negates the whole task from being automated. Why? Because if you don't have a documented workflow and previous examples of that work, then the AI wouldn't be able to learn how to do this task. It can still do it, but it will use its own general knowledge based on data it sees everywhere on the internet or based on your loose prompts that you give it to do this task for you. But what ends up happening in practice, you will end up babysitting that AI agent or that automation at every step of the way. And you're going to have to spend even more time reviewing its work and then adjusting what it's doing. That it negates the purpose of even automating it in the first place, because you end up spending more time and more money to do the work with the AI. So now when it comes to documented workflow, I wouldn't let that stop you from automating the task. And I'll tell you what I mean by this. Because almost no company has all their workflows fully documented. In practice, the way it works is you have a couple people that do these tasks, and most of the workflow lives, or the SOPs live in their head, or maybe on their own machines, and so they end up doing those tasks themselves. So what you want to do is you want to ask them to record their screen as they're doing the task and explain what they're doing, so that when you are actually creating the AI agent, you can feed it that recording with that explanation. And so it's gonna look at the screen, it's gonna also look at the transcript, and it will create the workflow or the SOP itself. And then you can have whoever is creating that AI agent for you check if it's the right workflow or SOP, and then have a back and forth with it. So that's why I said, don't let this stop you from automating something. But it doesn't mean that if you don't have it, you're just gonna automate it. No, you still need to do that step where someone has to record that screen as they're doing the task. It can take a day, it can take a week, it depends on what you're automating. For available data, it's also important, because let's say you're automating writing a proposal. If you have everything, but you don't have any example of a proposal, then how the AI will know if this is a good proposal or a bad proposal? It won't know. And so you might have to have a lot of back and forth with it until it figures out what's a good proposal or bad proposal. So ideally, you want to have many, many examples of good proposals, maybe even better if you have some bad proposals as well. Obviously, you want to have the good ones. And that way it knows what's good, what's bad. By the way, that's how they teach AI to detect cancer. They show it millions and millions of scans, and they label them cancer, non-cancerous, cancer, non-cancerous. And of course, they do a lot of other things. But having that data, that's what allows AI to become even better than doctors at detecting cancer. So again, these, you score them on a score of 1 to 5 each, so total on a score of 15. For these, it's a 0 or a 1, and you multiply them together. So if it's 0 times 1, it's 0. If it's 1 times 1, it's 1, meaning you can automate it. So how does it work in practice? Now, I'm listing many examples that realistically won't belong to one firm. These are many types of services or tasks that different companies would do, like bookkeeping for an accounting firm, admin, any firm, screening resumes, could be any firm, or let's say HR staffing types of firms, PPC marketing, a marketing agency. The reason why I listed them this way is just to show you how it would look like for different companies. Now, if you want to see a very specific example to one business, you can go watch my previous video. I go over how I did this for my own marketing agency. So you can see this applied just to one type of company. Now, let's go for bookkeeping. If you are an accounting firm and one of your main services is bookkeeping, probably if you're not using tools and automations, it's probably going to be a 4, because you're going to have to sift through many documents in terms of time. So it's a 4. In terms of impact, it's a 5 if it's one of your essential services. If maybe you provide CFO advisory services and that's the thing that makes you the most money, then maybe it's not going to be a 5 in terms of impact. Maybe bookkeeping is not an essential service that you offer. You know what I mean? So you want to always score this based on the other things that you deliver as well. And in terms of frequency, if you do this, let's say daily, then it's a 5 as well. So it earns a score of 14. I'm going to go over DA at the end. Admin, almost every company has some sort of admin, but for almost every company, it's not going to really impact your revenue. I just put a score of 3 here. Generally, it's going to be even lower than 3 usually. 3 in terms of time, 1 in terms of impact. That's generally how it's going to be for most companies. 5 frequency, let's say you do it daily, it's a score of 9. Screening resumes for an HR company or staffing company, if all you do is recruiting people for other businesses, then that is your core service. If it is your core service, then it's a 5 over time because you do it all the time. Impact is also a 5 because that's what companies are paying you to do. And frequency is a 5 because you do it daily, so it's a score of 15. And even if you're not a staffing firm, if let's say you are a company where you have to hire a lot of people all the time, you want to have some sort of automation for screening resumes. Now, PPC marketing, same thing. If you are a marketing agency, it's going to take you a lot of time, it has a lot of impact, and you do it daily. Weekly performance report. So we set time 2. It might not take a lot of time because you might have already a template that you just have to fill and just copy paste some data. 3, in terms of impact, the reason I put 3 here because if your clients can see their performance over time, it's going to be much different compared to them drawing their own conclusions about their performance. So if you manage any types of clients, you know that sometimes the narratives that clients have in their mind is very different than what you have in your mind. So putting this in a weekly report is going to help you retain those clients longer. So it's probably a 3. Frequency, you do it, let's say once a week, it's a 4. Then it's a 10. Lead gen, you generate leads. So 5 in terms of time, usually it takes a lot of time if you're doing everything yourself. 5 in terms of impact, because that's how you make money. And then 4 for frequency, let's say you do it again once a week, that's 14. Market research, if let's say you're a consulting firm and you do some sort of market research service, I just came up with these scores and a 12. So as you can see here, for some you have documented workflow and available data, so it's a 1. For some, 1 is missing, so it becomes a 0. It's so on and so forth. But before we even get there, you want to first choose the ones that have the highest score. So if we look at this, these 4 have the highest score. This one, this one, this one. Imagine this is like just one firm for now. And this one. After you look at these, then you want to look at DNA. So this, we're good. This, we're good as well. This, we're good. And this, we are not good. So you would start by automating these 3 things. And so when you have this, now you're automating a service or a task or a workflow that takes you a lot of time, has a lot of impact on your revenue. You do it very frequently, and you have a documented workflow for it, and you have available data for it. And same thing applies for these. So now it reduces the chances tremendously of you having to babysit the AI agent because you're feeding it the documented workflow and available data. It reduces the chances tremendously of automating something that doesn't need to be automated because we just said that these need to be automated by calculating these scores. And it also reduces the chances of creating automations that end up costing you more money compared to an actual human being delivering the service, because we're taking into consideration the impact. So when you're calculating the impact, you want to take that into consideration. So that's what I would do. Now, for example, let's say for lead gen, I have a 0 for documented workflow. And let's say we don't even have someone that really knows how to do this. Let's say, I'm just gonna use myself as an example here. I used to have for my own marketing agency a vendor that used to give us all the leads. And then we, after that, personalize the leads and then send them cold emails and do everything ourselves from there. But we didn't have a process to generate those leads because they were doing it completely themselves. But this is simple enough, especially if you have some technical expertise. For me, like I've always been involved in sales, so I kind of know what to look for and not to look for. So I could ask the help of AI to help me create a workflow to be able to generate leads. So in that example, it's fine. There are some exceptions, but I want you to be conscious of when you are making that exception. And if you're making that exception blindly, then it might end up costing you one of these 3 mistakes. If not, if you know what you're doing, then you can do something like I did with lead gen. And now I'm saving a lot of money and a lot of time. And the AI agent is almost fully autonomous. I just have to check their final output at the end. I don't even have to babysit them. And I've never fully generated leads the way that the vendor I was using was generating them. But now I'm doing pretty much the same thing that they're doing. So yeah, that's basically it. So I'm gonna leave you with some actionable steps for you to start implementing directly after this video. You first wanna start by listing all the tasks, and under each task, you wanna list all your subtasks, because you're not just creating one workflow. There are many sub workflows, and all of those create your main workflow. Once you do this for each one of them, and for each one of the sub workflows, you're gonna come and score them on a score of 1 to 5 for each of time, impact, and frequency. You add the score up before you even do DNA. You add the scores up. You then choose the ones that are the most important for you to automate. And then after that, you score them on a score of DNA. And if the score is 0 for any of those, it negates it from being automated. If it's a 1, you can automate it. With the exception of documented workflow, because as I mentioned earlier, you can have someone on your team record that screen, explain what they're doing as they're doing the task, and then you can feed this to the AI agent as you are creating it to be able to create the documented workflow. So if you want some help to do all of this accurately and quickly, I created a free tool and I'm leaving it down in the description. I would also appreciate if you can subscribe, like the video, and leave any comments with any suggestions or takeaways. See you on the next one.